And we're recording. All right, so the first part of the agenda is just kind of a year in review, some check-ins about from committees, reviewing kind of what we've done, and the treasurer's report. So, about this time last year, just kind of the quick overview, and we'll talk a little bit more in the presentation that will be given during the agenda. About the potential space, but this time last year we had a big discussion, made the decision to move forward looking into Cambrian Rise. We did a good bit of work on that, dug in, decided it was too big of a thing to bite off, but in the process got our sort of connected to Ron Manganiello, who is also looking there, but is moving Old Spokes home across the street, and liked the idea of being our neighbor, and that sort of started a lot of work. So we've been in conversation with him. The business planning committee's been working a lot on modeling out what that will look like. The brewing committee has been starting to kind of get zeroed in on what the the flagship beers will be, and investigating kind of a collaborative brewing process. Memes has been shifting kind of how our events have been working, what kinds of outreach events we've been doing. And then sort of on the capital development side, there's been, we've been thinking about through how we sort of secure the space, whether that looks like we're going to buy the location, or not us necessarily, but sort of an allied co-op. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then following the reports, we'll have this presentation kind of about the business plan that will include a kind of putting forward a proposal that will then be voted on Lumio about whether we should move forward kind of with next steps, raising some additional capital, and kind of moving forward with kind of a goal of end of 2020, early 2021 for opening. Then we'll have candidate statements to kick off the board election, after which this video will be shared with folks, and we'll put out the ballot. And then there'll be member space for if anyone has any other issues they want to bring up. So does that sound good to everybody? Cool. So then I would invite, maybe just to start, our treasurer to give a little just update on the finances of the co-op.
Sure, I can do that.
And do you want to come up so you're closer to the microphone? Or?
Can do.
David Smith, treasurer. So in the last year, we took in 20 new members, and they each paid $100 apiece. So we acquired $2,000 in member equity. We took in a little bit of some contributions, about $100, sold about $50 of t-shirts, recently sold $180 worth of hats. Expenses were $45 for business registration, $800 for tax accounting, which we are not going to do this year. We made some changes because that was like 80% of our income. So we found someone through Miles CPA that's going to provide some pro bono assistance and will work with me on that. A few $100 of some other advertising, subscriptions, catering facilities. We did take in $4,000 equity Class B from 7 members, specifically to finance the engineering study of the property Matt was just referring to. Well, not the one we just referred to, the second one, to see if it's feasible to move into. And our current state of affairs is about $3,700 in available cash. That $750 is earmarked for the remainder of that engineering study. Fixed assets, we have the kegs and the regulator there worth about $700 altogether and still functioning. We have some caps, and I just found out our t-shirt inventory is pretty substantial because we had not been accounting that as an inventory item, but as an expense item, and we'll migrate towards using that new inventory accounting program. So that's about it. I'm happy to continue in that role as best I can. Any questions?
If we move things, t-shirts into inventory, does that end up becoming a liability for us? If we were ever showing actual inventory taxes?
We can't expense it out if we show it as inventory, but that's kind of fair because if we're buying it for resale,
yeah,
then it's inventory. It's not really a profit or loss transaction. When we buy inventory, we just shift assets from cash or accounts payable to inventory,
yeah,
but it stays the same. But a few years ago when we got the t-shirts, they were expensed out, you know, $1,500 worth right away. And I don't think we're in a situation where we need to do that if it's even viable to reduce our profitability and subsequent tax liability. So I think moving forward, we're going to be doing more and more inventory, hopefully for more promotional product goods and maybe even beer at some point. But that's a little bit down the line.
The other thing we're going to beer. That's right.
Anything else? Thank you, Matt.
All right. So, Kirsten, what was the order of committees we decided at the board meeting that might be different than I have on here?
Memes, brewing, business planning, capital development, transition into your PowerPoint.
Yep, cool. So memes. Do we want to, Kirsten or anyone else want to give a little quick update on the?
I got that. Hey, I just realized you're MC and your initials are MC. That's pretty great. Have you heard that before?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi everyone, again, I'm Kirsten. I chair the marketing events and member engagement committee. So we did have a little discussion about branching out marketing because it's such a big task and especially important one as we launch into a potential space. But currently we're keeping it consolidated until someone might want to take up the leadership specifically of marketing. So that's sort of a bandwidth thing going on right now. In our year in review, we reflected on the fact that Full Barrel historically has done a lot of hosting of their own events. So kind of taking on the planning and hosting of just members only. And from member feedback, I heard that monthly events were really appreciated, and we really wanted to bring that back because I know we were doing almost quarterly brew days, and that was kind of how people were connecting. So we're making a goal to at least host one outreach event per month, but with a movement towards sort of low bandwidth events where we show up to things that are already going on and promote them or co-promote them with other groups. And moving towards also supporting your local brewer. So in this past year, we did a fun run. So we ran from foam to Simple Roots. The other direction? I don't know. I remember being really hot at Simple Roots. Oh, okay. So we ran from Simple Roots to foam. We did a bike and brew tour, which was Simple Roots, foam, switchback, zero gravity, Queen City, Vermont Pub and Brewery. We start to forget the ones towards the end. And we ended at the Ramble, which was really fun. We've done a couple pour events thanks to the brewing committee, and they can kind of talk about their past year next. But one of the fun things we've started doing as we transition to kind of test batches is that we have these beers that we need to get to people who aren't really in our circle of membership. So we poured at the Ramble. We poured at an Old Folks Home event. We're looking at hopefully hosting our holiday. Why don't you just come up here? Mike's giving me pointers that I'm not understanding. We put First Friday event at VSET, which was really fun. We also are hoping to host a Green Up Day event, so getting members together for like kind of socially responsible activities and then having after parties. And that was another push that has been recommended for this year. So moving into the coming year, we want to do a lot more community service oriented events. So we're doing a Day in the Dirt team for April. We're doing a Green Up Day event thanks to work that groundwork that Brad has put together. And then hopefully just moving forward with more events that connect with other great community efforts. Any questions? Oh, the hats. Those were new this year, which are really warm in this space, actually. I'd be taking one off. Yeah, there was a pom-pom, no pom-pom debate, and then I said it's not a democracy, even though it really is. And I did a pom-pom. There's a queue. Any questions, ideas, feedback for memes? We meet the second Wednesday of the month. We say 6:45 because between 6:45 and 7, we're usually buying beers. Simple Roots is kind of our locked-in location, but they've started a comedy night that's hit us a couple of times. So if Simple Roots is doing comedy, we usually will head to La Boca or Smitty's, which is in kind of the same block. So please come join us. Thank you.
Cool. Any questions for Kirsten before we move on? Hearing none. All right, so next we have the brewing subcommittee. Owen or Mike?
Oh, God.
All right, Owen.
Hello. So we've done a lot of work over the past year in terms of moving basically just from home brewing whatever we wanted, or just always brewing the strawberry porter just because that's the only thing we had, to branching out into trying to get somewhat of a pilot program going. That's culminated now in Cash in a Jar 1.1 and 1.2 that we're tasting today. Remember you can't be overly critical of these beers. I will not take it personally. If you think that they're terrible, now is the time to say so. But yeah, we're looking at continuing that program and also continuing into developing some collaboration brews. We have a brewery that we're looking to meet with, who seems amenable to it. We just have to figure out how we will be able to extract some profit from it. Yeah, but things are going well. There's a lot of beer being brewed, which is always a fun thing. Really glad I wore my t-shirt today.
Any questions for Owen or comments, thoughts, ideas?
Which brewery are we looking to collaborate with?
Say what?
I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't-
We can say.
Because we can say after the recording is off.
Oh,
Yeah,
Nothing in
it's
writing.
kind of like we want to, we've targeted them because they're of a size that we think is reasonable. But you know, there are plenty of other breweries that we would like to work with as well. So if things fall through, they will. But hopefully things will work out, obviously.
And Anheuser-Busch.
Yeah.
Yes, they're about the scale that we want to see. Yeah. Great. Anything else? Cool.
All right. And I will say, so we're kind of, hopeful on that one, but also there's like the potential for putting out kind of an RFP for a few, and it'd be kind of like co-branded cans, hopefully. So, all right. So next up is business planning. So you'll be hearing more about this from Andrew once we get to the presentation, but committee related stuff.
Yeah, so we're basically just going to take a look at the beginning of the year. We used our monthly business planning meeting to kind of do a year in review. What did we do well last year? What do we need to do better going into 2019? So a lot of what we looked back at in 2018 was, assessing the Cambrian Rise location. And as exciting as it was, being able to say, hey, this really isn't the perfect fit for us. Developing some financial templates so we can kind of adjust as we get different numbers, quotes, and things coming in. What we really a few things we wanted to really focus on moving into 2019, creating a little more structure for the business planning process. So trying to get a little bit more clear running meeting minutes and notes that can be open to the membership to follow along or engage in however they can. Having a more regular rhythm of the meetings. So we are now doing just about every fourth Wednesday is our standard one. It is changing occasionally depending on who we're trying to meet with. Meet with the architect that we've been working with, or something along those lines. A second piece that we really wanted to focus on was making sure we have a little bit better communication or collaborating with the other subcommittees. So we've had a couple really helpful meetings with the brewing committee with Owen, talking about the design of the brew house and the collaborative brewing strategy. And the collaborative brewing strategy was really the third piece that we wanted to make sure we were putting a focus on. David out of the business planning committee had really kind of spearheaded that effort and worked with the brewing committee. We wanted to make sure we weren't just focusing on the long-term developing the location, but also the shorter term collaborative brewing strategy. So we've been putting some more energy into balancing those two sides of things. So that's about where we are now. Any questions? Fantastic.
All right, and then finally, capital development, which is me. So there's been a few things. One was, it was mentioned briefly in David's report, is that to fund a couple of kind of pre-feasibility studies, just to sort of look and see, all right, are there any big kind of like red flags for the space we're looking at? We raised a little bit of money beyond the $100. Legally, we're allowed to raise, anyone's allowed to own up to 10% of the total common shares in the co-op. So the simplest way without needing to do an offering or anything was to just ask the membership to put some extra money in, up to $1,000 a piece. A few folks stepped forward. We raised sufficient money to be able to sort of do that. So that was good. And now looking forward, there's kind of two key pieces in play. One is sort of thinking about the co-op's development itself, and it seems kind of like we're almost going like orders of magnitude, right? Where it's like, all right, people putting in $100, and then all right, then we need to raise like $4,000, and then then looking at like, all right, so for kind of the development stuff, we might need like 50,000, and then maybe to start like more like 500,000. So step. So kind of thinking through what that is really going to look like is going to be some key work in the next month or two, potentially. The other side of it is the space, where the landlord, Ron Manganiello, is willing to rent to us, but also would really like to sort of sell the space, and it has a current tenant. So there's this kind of parallel work going on to try to create a real estate co-op that would essentially be a holding company that Full Barrel could be a member of, that would then buy the space, hold the lease for the remainder of the current tenant's lease, and then lease it to us. So Alan Matson and I have been working on that. We're kind of have a lot of stuff. The landlord was supposed to get us documents a while ago, and then had his appendix out, but he actually just got us some of the key documents like a day or two ago. So I think things are going to be kind of moving forward on the structuring of that, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But so kind of, I think in the next, now that we're starting to, we're moving towards, all right, serious business development, the capital raise stuff is going to become more salient, as that's what's going to help us get to the next level. So that's kind of a quick review. Any questions? Hearing none. All right. Well, then that's a good segue into the presentation. So just got into presentation mode, and I think you can just use the arrows now. Oh, it's not mirrored, so sorry. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Mirror it. This is such a big desktop. Alright, no, I think it should be here we are.
She's so well adjusted. It's like kids are resilient. Yeah, this is so it's going on right now.
But you really want to mirror so people on Zoom can see it.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so I want to mess with the display settings.
Okay.
Settings.
There we go.
I have
Okay.
nothing on your report.
Cool. All right. So presenting. Yeah, I guess we're gonna. Yeah. All right. Cool. All right, so I guess we'll start with the question of how did we get here, which we've already talked about a little bit, but do you want to, is there anything on here you want to add?
No, I feel like that pretty much covers that.
All right.
So just kind of giving what we've tried to pull over, leaning on all the work that's been done by members and people rotating through the board over the last 4 or 5 years, bringing out that vision basically of having this be a consumer cooperative with the workforce being self-managed through a workers' assembly. A lot of this, I know most of y'all have been very involved in this project, so you're all pretty familiar with what we're looking for. Really trying to have Full Barrel be a hub for the community that brings in a lot of the diverse constituents around the Old North End, around Burlington, to really come share knowledge, share ideas, just get to know each other, build social capital in our local communities. Obviously, values-driven organization with a triple bottom line, focus on people and planet, as well as being a financially solvent organization. Really looking to operationalize that through having a pretty small brewing operation with focus on the tap room, primarily on-site sales rather than a distribution model through taps and some crowler fills. And really looking to support our local communities, the home brewing community that this organization grew out of, as well as helping to grow and develop the cooperative movement. So basic, how we're making our money, what we're offering as products and services is our brews on tap, also having some guest taps, and crowler fills, and that's primarily how we'll sell our beer. With the collaborative brewing, that's really more the distribution model, and there's potential to supplement our production if we, since we're going with a pretty small brewing operation, if we need to supplement it through continuing our collaborative brewing efforts, or bring in more guest taps to make sure that there's enough beer in the tap room. We really want to look at what are opportunities to make this a real home for the members, even when the tap room's not necessarily open and serving beer. And in our development and our design process, we intend to have a lot of member feedback to define how the space is really laid out, what potential opportunities of having a member co-working space in off hours or workshops or other events that members can use the space for when the tap room's not open, whether that's educational workshops, etc. And of course, we'll have some merchandise like the t-shirts and the hats that you've seen around today.
All right, so thinking about just kind of like the space, right? So we're looking at the space right next to Old News, or sort of the current Good News Garage space. Yeah, Old News Garage.
Let's not have that leave us space.
Yeah. So there's a couple of kind of key considerations that really have made this attractive. One has been a big kind of question mark for us for a long time, has been food and how much effort we would need to put into building a business model around food, how much expense it would take to build out a sort of a proper kitchen to be able to have the full-on sort of VPB style restaurant along with the brew pub. And the fact that there are 2 BYOB and carryout places in the same building means we can kind of lean on that and sort of essentially outsource the food. Maybe we can find sort of a way to have a specific kind of value sharing relationship where when people order food from our place, we send the orders over and they're brought over, things like that. But just generally, this means okay, we can basically be at switchback levels of food where maybe we have a pot of chili and some pretzels or something like that, hot pretzels. But pretty low overheads. That's appealing.
Just one additional piece there, potentially having an opportunity for some pop-up cafes or bringing in food trucks as well to other areas where we can interact with the local food scene.
But the key is it doesn't need to be at the center of our business model, which was kind of a big challenge. And one of the things about the Cambrian Rise spot where it's kind of really they wanted it to have restaurant element, and that made it feel like a bit of a too big of a jump for us. The sort of North Winooski Avenue development, that's kind of a key corridor in the Old North End. There's kind of some changes to the street happening around sort of bike lanes being put in. It's definitely kind of like a commercial corridor that's between downtown and Winooski. So it's kind of a neighborhood that's on the move, but that still has kind of like fairly solid roots. And the building itself is owned and managed by Champlain Housing Trust. So it's very much kind of a mixed use sort of neighborhood, housing, commercial, et cetera. Do you want to talk a little bit more about neighborhood dynamics, or
Sure.
some folks who have done some of that research are in the room too.
So yeah, and a lot of this is still, under development, as you'll see. That's going to be a theme throughout this presentation. We still have a ways to go on all this, but we're looking at the population. A relatively recent census was showing about 28,000 people living in the Old North End. There's a lot of different communities, whether it's immigrant communities from different countries, arts communities, student populations, folks that have been living in the Old North End for generations. There's a pretty diverse collection of folks there. As for competition, we would be the first craft brewer, the only brewery in the Old North End. Right now, as for bars, you've pretty much got the Old North End or Tea Rugs and Drifters. You can get some beer at the restaurants, Butch and Babes and such. But we would be really the only primarily brewery and tap room sitting in there. Looking a little bit bigger, the Burlington, Chittenden County craft brewing environment. Obviously, that's very substantial. We're really, we understand there is some competitive elements within that, but we also really see the craft brewing movement as a very collaborative industry. We've had a lot of support from other local breweries, giving us information, letting us meet at their space, and really it's very encouraging. We kind of see it as looking at some of the trends, which we'll see on the next slide, that the industry is really the craft beer sales, having multiple breweries and craft brew, tap rooms, et cetera, really creates kind of a craft brew culture that's going to bring people more over from the macro brews, the light beers, into the craft brew environment. So we're really looking to work with those companies to build that culture. Beer sales overall have been relatively flat for a while. However, craft sales have been consistently rising. So that really kind of speaks to that piece I was talking about of pulling more market share over from those larger macro breweries, et cetera. Where the brewing industry is getting extremely competitive is in the distribution models, trying to get shelf space in stores, tap space at bars, restaurants. That's where it's really hard to get your beer out there and find some space. We do see a lot of room for growth still in like small tap rooms, having neighborhood breweries, and hyper-local place-based brewing. Just like a couple pieces on some of the demographics in the industry, core consumers really make up about three times more than like your occasional consumer of just like coming in very regularly, the amount they purchase, and a lot of those are economy drinkers that are going to purchase a cheaper beer, but are going to do it that much more often and come in, kind of be your regulars that are going to build that community there. That they're also the ones that are really spending a significant amount more overall, even though they're buying cheaper beers.
All right, so in terms of kind of the operational strategy, there's a couple of sort of key elements. One is both in terms of startup and ongoing, right? Is kind of leaning on the sort of social capital that comes with being a co-op. So both like kind of member engagement and development, but also marketing, right? Building that, core of people who own the space, being those core consumers. Continuing the work we're doing with the collaboration with local organizations, nonprofits. Being next to Old Spokes is a natural partnership that we've been cultivating now that we're seriously considering this, but sort of really kind of trying to have a lot of those, being that kind of like central hub location. And certainly sort of in terms of if we do want to do limited distribution, leveraging the co-op thing being able to get preferential shelf space treatment at places like City Market, which they've straight up offered us as soon as we're ready to go on that. On-site sales, right, is the primary thing. Being a tap room and avoiding the level of competitiveness at the core of our business model that would come with being kind of a production and distribution-oriented brewery. Having guest taps, so if we're sort of leaning towards a smaller scale system, but the idea of, okay, so always expecting there to be a balance of our beers and some interesting beers from other places, means that if we start to sort of have our consumption outstrip production, we can always substitute in and have that not be a huge deal for people, especially if it's kind of, again, we sort of have beers that our members want to have on tap, and we can kind of tap into our members and say, hey, like, here's a list of possibilities. What would you be most interested in having? Again, we've already talked about the food stuff and the sort of multi-use third place, but to drill a little bit more into that, sort of maybe the idea of during the day, if you're a member, you can come in and there's dollar coffees and you can post up with your laptop prior to opening. Depending on the size of equipment, certainly thinking about the design to include, in addition to the general bar space, some sort of community room that could be an event space or meeting space that different groups could. Again, it could be one of those things when you're thinking, oh, where should we have a gathering full barrels, or where should we have a meeting full barrels? An obvious place to do it that, you can get some carry out and you can get some beers and, work on whatever the project is that you're working on.
So just one final piece on that, with wanting to be a real hub of the community and an open, family-friendly place that is encouraging for anyone to walk into and be comfortable there. With the guest tabs, that'll also allow us to have things beyond beer, whether that's other alcoholic drinks, so ciders, meads, ginger libations, as well as non-alcoholic drinks, potentially kombuchas or other things along those lines.
Mm-hmm. All right.
So here we normally talk a little bit about this is your management team. Currently, obviously, we're still an all volunteer-run board managed organization. And it's primarily.
But Andrew really wanted to make a flow chart.
It's primarily all the folks in this room, each other. So really, right now, it's primarily that top half of it, board of directors with the subcommittees. We wanted to kind of look a little bit at what will this transition into as we go forward. This is still, an organization chart very much under development, but looking at still having the board of directors with some subcommittees, but moving a little bit away from board management structure to having those subcommittees maybe be more in an advisory role with the workers assembly, the self-managed workers really in charge of the operational side of things. Potentially having opportunities for them to have subcommittees that members or other stakeholders could potentially engage in some respect. And again, that's, we'll develop that further as things go along. We basically just took, 1 month of, again, this is still rough under development, income statement just to show what some of our projections are looking at without putting every single detail in there right now, to show that the model we're looking at right now does look like we would have some positive net income coming in. If people want to digest that for a minute or have any questions.
Can members get a copy of that?
What's that?
Can members get a copy of that?
Absolutely.
Yes, and there's a more sort of detailed one in the business planning.
Yeah, if you actually go on to Lumio, or there's a link to the whole financial templates.
Yeah, we
And
still.
if this gets you excited, you should go to the business planning committee. That's what they're all about, is to go process.
Yeah. So this is roughly on the sort of based around. We had originally been talking about between a 5 and 10 barrel system as the sort of target after kind of a few conversations, both around all right, what would be the expenses and things around wastewater, kind of, you know, the scale of the space, et cetera. But plus, Owen had a conversation with a professional brewer who has experience both with production and more the brew pub side of things. And the recommendation that kind of came out of that was to sort of like aim for a little bit smaller scale, 3.5 being sort of fairly standard size for an electric brew system. You know, there's also some talk about solar on the roof or solar canopies, so we could basically have, you know, if we're running on electric, use those credits. But so that kind of setting the parameters for much of what we've calculated thus far. There's definitely still numbers to dive into and get a little more granular on.
Yeah, so we are looking between like about 2 to 5 barrel brew house is what we're really kind of narrowed in on at the moment. And this, like Matt said, is built off a 3.5 barrel system. And we've alluded a few times to this, but just for a little more clarification, we have started working with an architect who's brought in, we've had some meetings with a mechanical engineer, wastewater engineer, and some other consultants that have been able to come in and help give us a picture of what these different size systems will require. That helped bring up our projections, their startup costs and income statement, et cetera.
All right, so this is the projected timeline. So
one thing on that previous is that, is this presentation just for us or are you giving it to someone else?
Right now it's just for
us. But I think going into like payroll, livable wage stuff, because that's pretty high.
Yeah, so on payroll, or what we sort of assumed was $15 an hour for taproom staff plus kind of a sort of like, you know, QSERA for prorated healthcare and a simple IRA for retirement. So it's basically 4.5 full-time equivalents at that. Brewer sort of at 18 an hour, and then general manager at like 25 an hour, sort of with those same benefit packages or prorated if you're part-time. So that's, but yeah, certainly would be happy to share kind of like the exact calculation we've gotten. That includes payroll tax and all of that. So that would be total. Okay, yeah, so thinking about timeline, how do we get from here today? So March 2019, we're here. Hello, everyone. So thinking about the spring, 3 kind of big things are going to be, you know, raising investment for the development costs. So kind of what are the next expenses, and we'll get into that in a minute. You know, the real estate investment co-op formation process, if that's going to be purchasing space, and you know, and then kind of development staff are hired or a contractor or something, someone to sort of be kind of quarterbacking like all the development process stuff, subcontractors, and sort of the design process continues as we have the funds to be able to do that. Summer, the 2019, the real estate investment co-op capitalizes, prepares to make a purchase. September is kind of a key date, because that is 1 year from when Ron purchased the building, so he wanted to sort of hold it for at least 1 year for tax reasons. So that would be when the condo would be purchased, and also when we want to sort of really sort of have a sense on our end that we have, that we feel comfortable committing to taking over the lease the following year. Because the current tenant has said that they would be interested in extending if there was the option to. So if we're in a place where we're feeling like, you know, an extra 6 months or an extra year would be helpful for us, that would be the point at which we say, all right, let's push it back a little bit, and then, you know, they can do that extension or something. So really aiming at September 2019 being sort of a key decision point for the project. So if we say yes, all right, we're moving forward, you know, business planning continues, and we really prep for our sort of major capital raise, the one for the full startup. Then ideally, sort of if everything's going well, September 2020, you know, the current tenant moves out, we assume the lease. We've partially, you know, we've got all the sort of contractors and designs all ready to roll. So basically, as soon as they vacate, you know, tear down and construction starts, bang through it as fast as possible. You know, maybe it's even something where, you know, we do it in chunks. We get the tap room first and kind of do a soft opening as just a bar, and then, you know, aim to have the rest of it done a few months later to start getting revenue, or we just do the whole thing. I think that's very much kind of up in the air right now. And then aiming for, ideally everything's in place, staff are hired, and we are up and running on New Year's 2020, 2021. So that's the time frame that we're thinking. So reactions, thoughts, questions?
Do you know how much he wants for the space for a purchase?
Yes, I have actually a bunch of,
Ballpark.
yeah.
Oh, you have
Yeah.
this coming up, or?
Well, so it's not in here.
Okay.
But that might be one thing that I wouldn't want to put on the recording.
Understood.
But happy to talk about that at the end, and I
Okay, that's
share
totally fine.
documents with it too.
Yep.
Yep.
Understand.
And
But-
part of that is we as Full Barrel wouldn't be looking at purchasing it.
Absolutely, right, I was thinking.
But from our perspective, the current, the lease would probably be 12 a square foot,
Mhm.
plus like about 4 triple net, which is, when we were looking at the other spot, it was more like 22 to 24 a square foot. So,
Yeah, which is off the charts for what we want to do.
Yeah.
One other quick question, is the leaseholder is the leasing that's currently in that space, is there a lease to that, or are they month to month right now?
no, their lease is to the end of August 2020.
2020.
And then if they basically, if there's no other lease, they have the option to renew 6 months before.
I see, got it.
Any other questions on this front?
No, I just want to highlight that we would decide to sign the lease and then have a year to plan is amazing. It seems like a good gift and not really bad. That seems extremely unlikely in most situations. That would be really awesome,
Mhm.
because then we could go in but also sell or develop the membership, knowing that we have this thing coming up in 12 months.
Right.
Great.
It's a good marketing thing.
Yeah.
It's a long amount of time, and I think it
You can put a
could really get people.
Countdown timer on our
Yeah,
website.
yeah.
And having
Right.
friends who don't want to leave,
Yeah.
that's the best part, is they would most likely be offering them the opportunity. They wanted, I think, a 3-year lease. They
Yeah,
wanted
that was one
to-
other thing, was that Ron
So,
basically.
So I think there would be room if we were like, oh, we still need to raise, let's do a year lease and keep you guys in there. Ideally.
The one other thing that's not on this timeline, but that will be kind of hopefully going on in the process is the collaborative brew thing. So if we can if we can do a first one, it's successful, maybe it has, members pre-ordering, that sort of stuff, generating maybe ideally, a few bucks a case for us. So it's a little revenue stream, but it's also a big marketing thing. Then as we're sort of signing the lease, putting the word out, people are seeing a beer with that's co-branded with our logo in a few stores around town, and it's kind of part of building that momentum and making sure that we have a product that's dialed in and that people want by the time we open.
And shameless plug, if you have any artistic beer-loving friends, the pitch to get their art in a can would be really fun. Get your art in stores via Full Barrel.
All right, so
So we're looking at, there'd be 2 primary capital raises. One to continue our development work, which is really the next big step if we are really ready to move forward with saying the membership's ready to say, hey, we're comfortable with this space. Then we would look to raise up to $50,000, primarily for about half of that going towards project development support, whether that's a consultant or an employee, just to be able to supplement the board and manage the development work. And then the other half going towards the architects, the engineers, and the other consultants and contractors that we've begun working with already.
Mm-hmm. And then so when thinking about just the strategy, and there's going to be more conversations going forward, but the strategy on this would be a mixture of, all right, we're moving, let's bring in more members. We brought in 20 this year, but concerted push, we can get if we can get 100 new members, that's, a nice little chunk of this. And then probably either sort of member loan type thing or the non-voting preferred shares that we've been talking about. And we have essentially we have the offering parameters written up. It would just be a matter of actually kind of executing on it. So the exact structure that this will take is still might be mixed, still up in the air, and also we'll probably be talking to a few institutional sources. But we'll see how that goes. But this is the rough 25 is assuming a half-time person for a year funded, and then the consultants sort of fees are very rough ballpark, And we're going to try to get that before we sort of put the ask out, try to get like exact quotes, or as close as we can with consultants, like, you know, for the various things we'd be using. And then this is more broad strokes, but you know, but just sort of thinking about in a year, if we're successful, have done all of that, and then we're like, all right, it's summer 2020, we're raising this money. You know, roughly what we're looking at. Things could be adjusted, and probably will be adjusted. You know, certain assumptions here, like for instance, how much remodeling build out will cost. You know, we found on forums people saying, you know, budget 75 a square foot. Other people said less. We picked the higher number there. Lease is pretty predictable. Staffing. Want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So staffing we included. So all these costs in general are primarily for our first three, basically purchase to like get us up and running, and then our first 3 months of costs. So the initial staffing there is actually basically hiring a general manager 6 months before starting, and averaging about 30 hours a week in leading up to opening, and then going to full time along with the rest of the staff that Matt discussed, the different positions we had laid out there. So that 100,000 covers that 6 months of the general manager and then 3 months of the full staff. You know, the brewing equipment, that's pretty, we were able to get pretty good numbers on that. Again, that's built off of the 3.5 barrel system right now, so it could be some up or down with that depending on what we actually go with. Do we buy a brand new system? Do we find a brewery that's, you know, getting larger? And that's one piece where we're looking at kind of the initial $50,000 capital raise, and then this later somewhere around $500,000 capital raise, because we're going to keep an eye out for brewing systems. Once we really have dialed in what we're looking for, it's possible that we would do kind of an individual raise if we find a good deal, so we're able to jump on that when we come across it. So that part may end up kind of coming out as its own piece.
All right. So this is the proposal that we put together that we're going to put out to the full membership via Lumio, along with the board election vote, which is just sort of essentially an advisory thing saying, do you vote in favor of authorizing the full Barrel Co-op board of directors to sign a memorandum of understanding to lease the condo at 331 North Winooski Avenue that's currently occupied by Good News Garage. It could be from Ron, it could be from the real estate co-op, but you know, generally advising yes, this is a good idea, and also doing the up to $50,000 capital raise to sort of fund this next year's worth of work, and then we would come back to the membership probably next year at the annual meeting. Hopefully, sort of we would be right at the time to be then thinking about that full startup raise.
And so, you know, obviously we're not going to be signing a memorandum of understanding tomorrow, but to be comfortable going out and asking for an additional $50,000 capital raise, we really wanted to be sure that we had member backing for, yes, this is the spot for us. Let's really give like some pretty significant commitments. So basically just authorizing the board that when the time comes, go ahead and sign off on that. Is why we had those tool pieces in there.
Mm-hmm.
Could we do a $50,000 grant anywhere? There's free money on the table in place for this?
Definitely look for it.
Yeah. Not that I'm immediately aware of, but certainly there's.
Charlie Roots grant for rising breweries.
It's, you know, I've been thinking too, you know, I got, you know, like my boss and stuff like that, right? You know, these are people that are high net worth individuals that,
Mm-hmm.
but the problem is with high net worth individual writing a $50K check, right? Then what do they get back in return for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, you can't give them more membership than anybody else has here, right? And then you're looking at profit sharing type of thing. We're not looking at a lot of profit in this place,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's going to kind of be a more break-even type of situation. So that's tough to go and get somebody who's kind of going to be an angel to sleep in and do this.
Mm-hmm.
But there's all kinds of free money on the table if you look in the right places from the government and other locations. So
Mm-hmm.
And the income statement that we do have under development has our cost of capital estimated, I believe, at 6%, whether that's dividend or interest.
It's estimated at essentially a $500,000 loan at 6% amortized over 7 years. So the more that we can get that's cheaper money, the better, right? So, other thoughts or questions on this proposal before we move to our board elections?
Well, that's the question, how many square feet is the space?
3,024.
3,024.
Yeah, and when we were looking, we had identified between 2 and 3, so it's right there.
And our board meetings are always open and they occur in the space, so.
Yes, we've been.
Members
Less on
yeah.
the west side.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, so if you attend a board meeting, you could maybe have to go to the bathroom next week.
Yeah, it's definitely opportunities to get in there and check it out.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions or thoughts, observations? Sources of terror. All right. Well, thank you, and thank you, Andrew, for putting together the slide deck.
Yeah, we didn't make it very pretty, but hopefully we got the information out there.
All right. So our last item is board elections. So we have let's see, a few candidates. This is an opportunity to say brief statements, and then the video will be posted along with the ballot the poll on Lumia. So, who would like to go first to give their little candidate statement? Anybody?
I didn't write anything in advance. I'll just wing it first. Currently on the board.
Come over here so you can be on the video.
If you stop sharing, it'll make them bigger on the screen too. Right now, the recording is only of the screen. You have to stop sharing.
Yeah, I've already stopped.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, great.
Cool. So now you can see yourself.
Great.
There it is.
Talk to the universe, David.
David Smith.
Infinite.
Please, calm down. My name's David Smith. I've been the treasurer for the last year. I'm first year on my board of directors, so I joined about 4.5 years ago, and I'd be happy to continue in that capacity. I currently operate a business and been working with QuickBooks accounting program for over 20 years, and my business is in promotional products distribution, so I can also be of some help in that area. But I'd like to be a member of the board. I've enjoyed it the last year and want to continue in that capacity. End of speech.
Miles, you want to come and go next? Time for it.
Hi everyone, I'm Miles. I think the newest board member as of October 2018. I've really enjoyed being part of this brewery co-op. I work in the beverage industry, but it's an importer who I don't have a lot of control of the beer, nor the business, nor the product, and I'm excited to be a little bit more involved, well, not involved, but have it be something in this community of Burlington. That's something I've been trying to become more a part of as a remote worker over the past year. So excited to be here, excited to see what's next over the formation of this brewery. So let's do it.
Brian?
I want to make sure I'm on the screen here. I'm Brian Guy. I wrote a big long thing so you can read it another time, but the 3 basic points are just that I believe in co-ops. I think it's an amazing model and something that is a good balance to the way that Americans do things in general. And I'm not afraid of the S word, the socialist word. I think that it's, that's something we have to keep in mind when we do this. And so I've been on 2 co-op boards before. I loved the service. I loved the opportunity to be part of the inner workings and also to represent members. I was on the board at City Market and then at a childcare co-op in Oregon when my kids were in there, and they're both great, and they were run by policy governance, which is fun, and fun. When you see it working well, it's a complicated and boring thing, but when it works well, it's really effective. And then I love Burlington. We live in the Old North End. We live on High Street. We own Almost Market. I work for the state otherwise, but we just want to see the community, get something this awesome. And then beer is really important. So I think that we need to make sure the way that I was telling people at the Bucket Brigade was like, if you are interested in brewing beer, here's a chance to see that done and have a group of people taste it and, work with recipes and work with the process. Even if you're not a brewer, that's your income. Here's a chance to work with those folks, but also, to democratically see something come to life and then have it tasted by your friends in this local area. I mean, I just think that the potential is huge. So I'd love the chance to serve in the capacity of the board.
Thank you. All right, and I'm gonna disconnect from this. The last person was not able to come, as Eric, and he sent in a statement, which I will read.
He had a previous engagement from like months ago. He's actually at a bachelor party. And based on his Untapped profile, he is doing some incredible research on behalf of the I was on Untapped last night, like, oh, Eric, I forgot you're at a bachelor party. Look at all those flavors.
So here's his statement, which I'll read real quick. Hello, friends. First, I'm sorry I could not make it tonight. Unfortunately, the meeting overlapped with a commitment that's been scheduled for months and for which there's no option to reschedule. I stepped into a board position partway through a term, filling in for a previous member who had to resign for personal reasons. It is not an exaggeration to say it's been an honor to serve this community. It is a very exciting time to be a member of this co-op. There's an enormous amount of momentum, and being in the midst of it is nothing less than thrilling. A bit about me. I grew up in the Upper Valley area of Vermont and moved to the big city of Burlington for school. I never left. Following 7 years in the nonprofit development world, a year or so ago, I started a company with the goal of helping facilitate strong community partnerships between for-profit businesses and nonprofit organizations. I'm also the executive director of Campaign Vermont, a nonpartisan advocacy organization focusing statewide on their 3 E's of prosperity: education, ethics, and economics. Though it may have moved by the time you read this, my weekend hustle has been working with the crew at Groenfell Meadery and Havoc Mead in Colchester, both as a bartender and a bit on the brewing side. For fun, you can usually find me, and most likely my dog Jules, somewhere outside, either fishing, kayaking, hiking, or maybe even just wandering aimlessly and enjoying the sun. A good brew is also likely to be nearby. Given the opportunity to continue my role on the board, I promise to remain active and engaged. It has been an honor to serve you, the members. We have an incredible team here, and I look forward to helping us forge ahead. So that is Eric Lamontagne. According to our bylaws, members do have the right to nominate from the floor. So if anyone else would like to throw their hat in the ring, or would like to nominate someone else to throw their hat in the ring before we close the nominations, I would invite that now.
How many more vacancies are there?
There's currently 4 openings and 4 candidates. All right. Hearing none, I will close nominations. And so voting will happen. I will put both the video and members' bios as links in the poll, and we'll aim to get the poll up tonight. And it will be sent out to members. Members will have a period to vote, and then we will declare the election complete. New board will be formed, and we'll get rolling. And also, I did want to sort of say a big thank you to our departing board member, Mike, who has been really a super volunteer for years now. So thank you, Mike. You want to say any words?
I'll miss you. No, I'm glad that I was part of this, and I still will be.
Cool. All right, so our last item is just member space. So it's just
By
kind of
stepping off the board, he's getting our non-board membership engagement.
yeah.
Up.
So our last
Strategic. I didn't ask him to step down.
our final item is member space, which is just open space for if there's anything people want to bring up, questions they have, whatever. Just open floor before we close out the meeting.
Is where we can air our grievances.
Yep. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, actually, I really do invite feedback on like how the board could do better. I always appreciate feedback. What you'd like to see from us in the coming year.
Well, your emails have been good.
That's some actual meetings.
That was I think a really big improvement. Just getting these, I think, well-written email updates from what the board was doing, that was really, I don't know, maybe I just started reading them more. Maybe
No.
No, it was a goal when I came on.
Okay.
Yeah,
I wanted to
Kirsten is
push-
up to game.
Okay, good, okay. I was about to
Push
say,
at least a monthly
It's
communication out to
really
the
helpful,
membership.
yeah, no.
Yeah, it's like monthly, not as long as like a weekly, for me and the membership.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts, comments?
In our space, and this may be too granular at this point, do we want to consider entertainment, like, like bands, because bands bring people in to drink, right? So
Absolutely.
a little, like a little stage, a little raised area, maybe, 10 by 10 or something, but.
Something pneumatic.
Yeah,
Pump
right,
it
yeah,
up.
pump it up, right, yeah, part of 4 comes up, right, there you go.
So just to speak a little bit, I guess, on the design of the space, the architect we're working on really wants, before he really starts drawing out any floor plans, to do a member engagement process where he'll conduct individual interviews with about 20 members, and then do a live design charrette, a couple hours with probably about 30 members, and really kind of draw out from the membership what do we all want that space to be used for, and really develop the space and the design of it from that. And whether we decide that that's actually the process we're going to go forward with, either way, that we really intend to make it in some way bring the members' ideas into the design. But the stage and bands are definitely on the radar for sure.
With the WAG design they provided, was that for a 10-barrel system? So we'll have more space now?
Yeah, and even that was the size of the system was just sort of like, all right, half of it will be brewery, more or less, or like 1,000 square feet brewery, and the rest.
And since we moved from a 10-barrel to
Yeah, so we might
probably
have more.
educational space?
We might have more space. That's yeah.
Still could be as large.
Yeah, the WAG part of that.
One last guess, by the way.
Yeah, WAG is for one last guess. The WAG part of that is Eric really, we didn't have a strong conversation about okay, this is our brewing system, these are how many fermenters, brights, here's, a mill. He just kind of was like, I'm not exactly sure what a brewing operation looks like. I'll draw a few circles and squares over here.
But if
So
we
it's
pay for
not-
circles and squares, we should probably be sharing the
Yeah.
membership.
But I guess my point being that that's not necessarily the amount of space that a 10-barrel system needs.
Any other comments before we refresh our drinks and go about our Saturdays? All right, then I will
Is there
entertain.
anyone on Zoom? Sorry for
See
your
right
chat
now. Let me
questions,
check.
just one before you can disconnect.
Nope, not currently.
I always
But I will stop the recording now. So